Welcome all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being on time. My name is Andy Prisco. I'm the founder of Jumpstart Mastery, and Nate Block is with me today from Stewardship Dynamics, and Nate also works with us at Jumpstart. We are strongly associated with competency and method-based crisis de-escalation training. How many people here were here for Steve Einhaus's presentation earlier? So I'm the founder of the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team program in our state, which was administered by the Behavioral Health Administration. So in state hospitals, residential treatment facilities, this was a program where legislatively funded FTEs responded to the presentation of aggression and violence among people served only using their words. And in the early academies in 2014 and 2015, I would have Steve come to the PERT academies so he could talk about what it was like to be secluded or restrained to people who were state hospital and residential treatment employees. And there was never a dry eye in the place. Like if anybody could cause someone to think twice about resorting to that kind of, let's say, coercive intervention, Steve was the guy to do it. And I was so delighted when I learned that he was going to keynote here. I'm looking forward to seeing him at some point. I haven't seen him yet. But we're going to be touching on some of the themes that Steve speaks to in our discussion today, because in our work in crisis de-escalation across the nation, we have come into contact with a lot of systems. We've been in juvenile justice systems throughout the United States, adult correction systems, community mental health, co-response programs, workplace violence prevention initiatives, residential treatment facilities, and all of the expressions of the care and services initiatives that can occur depending upon state government, county government, local government, federal funding, how that's all organized. What we've also come to see are the common themes that caused the people who are responsible for hosting this conference to entitle the conference The Restoration of Safety, Dignity, and Hope. So when we had the initial conversations to potentially come down here, it caused Nate and I to think an awful lot about why would a conference be entitled Restoring Safety, Dignity, and Hope? That must contemplate something pretty serious. And in our experience with workforces across the country, I would say that the conference is aptly titled because workforces are absolutely feeling like those are in states of deficiency. The need is overwhelming. The services aren't enough. We plug the holes in the dam with our fingers and our toes, and the water keeps coming and the dam is cracking, and agencies are referring to funding, resource allocation problems, workforce churn. How many people in here are working for an agency where you see high workforce churn? So half the room or more. We'll be talking about that. Right arrow. So here we are. And before we get into introductions, Nate and I are we're gonna issue a proposition to you. Next slide. Are you seeing these things? Are you seeing claims of personal safety being eroded by flagrant litigation, professional tradition or agency history neglected, what you do in your agency, what it's known for, its legacy is no longer honored or appreciated? Excessive apprehension or reticence to use force. I can tell you that I've been in a number of settings where in the onboarding of workforce members to the public safety domain, and I should say that I have a long history as not only a state behavioral health employee in our forensic system, but I was a volunteer firefighter EMT for many, many years in my community, and since then I'm now the elected fire commissioner in my district. When we onboard workforces today, we're seeing very, very different relationships between the people that come into the environment and the expectations that the jobs often require, where in the enforcement of safety, where people are supported under statute and law, there's a reticence to even want to do it because of all of these concerns associated to litigation, that people are not acting promptly because of fear, which we're going to talk about. Are you seeing, when it comes to personal dignity, principles of collectivism over individual care, the group rather than the person-centeredness? Anybody here familiar with the person-centered language guidance that came out from the National Institutes of Health? It's worth researching. It's worth looking into to see how NHI had to address the different cohorts. Some cohorts like to be identified by group identity. For instance, has anyone here ever been to the National Federation for the Blind Conference? 5,000 blind people, about 5,000 white canes, 5,000 dogs, 10,000 pet relief areas in a place. I love going to that conference because I sit on the board of an agency that serves people who are blind. They, for instance, like to be called blind people. They don't like person living with blindness. We're blind people. And then there are other people who are associated with a diagnosis who prefer to be a person living with, as opposed to a label. We struggled with that in state hospitals and residential treatment facilities for a long time. Are you seeing dignity removed by some of these principles? Are your agency leaders concerned with optics and how things look in the newspaper, on the internet, over the truth of something? And is that showing up in either their support or their lack of support for a workforce member, or maybe you? Are you seeing hope undermined? You know, you come into this field with a desire to be of service to another human being. And on the behavioral health side of things, we see that to an extraordinary degree. So much so that in training with people in behavioral health, when we're talking about validation, they're very, very good at validation. And then when we get to having a conversation about rules, laws, shared values, things where we need to work with someone on comporting with, let's say, more social functioning, appropriate social functioning behavior, when we have to talk about rules, people in behavioral health are less familiar with that. When you get uniformed corrections, public safety, police, uniformed security, they're real strong on rules. They're not real strong on validation. You need both. We need both. Are you seeing hope undermined by political pressure and ideological possession? These are questions for you to consider. Questions. Next slide, thanks. So who are we? And what are we here to talk about today? We're here to introduce some ideas that might help you look at the problem sets differently. This is the first time we're having this kind of conversation. We generally don't talk about these things. We're generally in learning environments where we are providing people very concrete, measurable skills in crisis de-escalation. But in the carrying out of that work, we're exposed to extraordinary problem sets. The Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Facility, the largest juvenile justice system in the nation, New York's juvenile justice system, California's Office of Neighborhood Safety, Mobile Crisis Response Team. We are in a lot of systems, and people are feeding back the same things, irrespective of sector, that they need help with: safety, dignity, and hope. And I love that this conference is named that. So briefly, as the founder of the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, I worked in state government for a pretty long time and left as the clinical training manager of the forensic system. The forensic system is where the mental health system and the criminal justice system overlap, where we have to sort out competency evaluation, competency restoration, and felony crime. Following the early COVID years, the demand for what we were doing in psychiatric crisis response became so great that I left state service to meet what I thought was a growing need for very concrete skills in what we did. And since 2021, Jumpstart Mastery has been throughout the United States and remotely in other parts of the world in psychiatric care and services environments and all the other environments I talked about, trying to raise competencies in how people support other people in crisis. And what we've learned on that journey is that in the training, what we're really doing is we're empowering workforce members with resilience. We're empowering workforce members to deal with circumstances and conditions that are just extraordinary. And it's an honor to be in front of you today to talk about some of these things. And along that journey, I met Nate Block. So I'm going to let Nate introduce himself and his history, please.
Morning, everyone. Like Andy said, my name's Nate Block. Before we get into the actual content, which just to give you a heads up, we'll invite some audience participation right off the bat. So basically the next slide, you might have to talk. So if you weren't nervous now, it's okay to be. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am as well as my career. So I want to first start by expressing an immense amount of gratitude. I'm so grateful that this conference is happening. I'm so very grateful to be here standing in front of you. And I'm especially grateful that you're all here. My career started in around 2013, 2014. So I would like to consider my career in its early phase, and this didn't exist then. So thank you for being here. I started as a wildland firefighter in a rural community, and then I was a volunteer firefighter for a small town, 100% volunteer. That led me to chase that profession for several years. So I was a resident firefighter at a student program in Olympia, Washington. It doesn't exist anymore. It's called FEST. So it was full-time school, full-time duties as a firefighter, paid tuition to be there, didn't get compensated. It was super fun. Was afforded all the rights and responsibilities as a firefighter, but just didn't get a paycheck. So we were all pretty committed. I ended up becoming a fire resident, so I lived at a fire station for 2 years. Worked about 400 hours a month during that period of time, so I got a lot of exposure time to calls and sleep deprivation, which is why I might stutter a little bit today. Following that, I ended up being a critical care EMT in Tacoma because the protocols in Pierce County were way cooler than the protocols in Thurston. I wanted to do more stuff, so I ran up there to do that for a little while, and it was really great. And about that time, I had a 90-degree right-angle career change. And there's a long version of that story, but the short version is I got tired of helping people 10 minutes at a time. I saw all the frequent flyers that we were going to, and I was like, these folks need case management. And they need people who are resilient, who have skills and abilities far outside of what they're currently capable of to help them get there. And I felt called to do that. Followed some great examples, took a huge risk and a massive pay cut, and started one of the first, as far as we know, first law enforcement funded jail diversion case management teams in the country. So the first order of business was the city of Olympia had sort of a running list of the top 20 or 25 folks that lived, well, so to speak, were in a certain area of the downtown Olympia corridor that were the most prone to 911 calls, the most prone to violence, the most mentally ill, and almost all of them were homeless. And they were like, go work with those folks. And that's when I met Andy. That is when we needed skills on how to do that. And at the time, Andy was providing a dynamite training. We met on Zoom because it was COVID. It was great. I'll never forget, I remember asking Andy in the midst of the training, yeah, Andy, this sounds all well and good, but how is this supposed to work on people with schizophrenia? And he laughed and said, Nate, we we designed this and built this around folks with schizophrenia. Trust me, it's going to work. And he was right, and I had to lean into that for a little while before I began to trust my skills. Following that, I transferred over to local government. So currently I run a program called the Resource Hub. That is a one-stop shop for social services. So we see about 3,000 people a year, and anything you can possibly imagine, we're open to the public. People are walking in the door. So that's, hey, I just got a first-time DUI. I need to do SUD and mental health assessments. Cool, we got providers in the back. Go do that. I am a single mother. I just drove here from Florida. I'm living in my car. I have nothing. I need everything. You're in the right place. That's what we tell people when they walk in the doors. You're in the right spot. The idea is we were tired of seeing people get kicked around all over town trying to find each individual narrow resources that they need. So why not host a place where the nonprofits can stay right within their mission set and just come in voluntarily. So that whole program I run with 2 people. Me and one other person. So when I tell you I have a wealth of experience talking to people face to face, it's like 1,500 people a year sitting down with a sheet of paper. What are we going to do next? I said I was going to talk a little bit about who I am, and one of the reasons that I'm so grateful to be here is prior to that career, I have a pretty significant lived experience history. So substance use, mental health. I am a 2-time suicide survivor. So when I say that I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm really grateful you guys are here, I really mean it. It's okay to laugh at that, I'm fine. Yeah. I didn't have the services that you guys provide now, and I needed it. And I know a lot of people who didn't make it. So thank you for being here. All right. Oh, yeah. And then in the midst of all of that, I decided that getting a master's degree was going to be a good idea, so I'm doing that. So I'm studying government management and leadership at Johns Hopkins. And in 2024, I started my own company where I teach leadership and culture development to nonprofits specifically, because what I saw was the training that was being provided to a lot of those folks was not adequate to meet the need of the level of expectations that were being put on people, and decided to just do it on my own. And when I say I'm doing it on my own, I am a company of one. So we can talk more about that. You hit the next one for me? Okay, Q&A starts now. I prepped you. I told you it was gonna happen. So, like Andy said at the beginning, restoring implies loss. So I'm posing a question to you. What did we lose and when? Why did we lose it so quickly? We haven't been doing this so long. That was brave. Okay, say more about that. Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah, so it's like a really terrible example of like trickle-down economics. You know, like we had this thing, it went away, and now we're experiencing the fallout from that. Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't really hear them, and so I was going to say like funding, but it sounds like you pretty much touched on that. So.
Mental health hospitals.
Yeah. But for me personally, what I've seen with my private practice is how the funding cuts lead to everyone doing more with less and being told make it work.
Yep.
And it's not working.
Yeah, that's not enough. Yeah, funding's scarce, absolutely.
In state hospitals, it sounds like Washington, as well as Oregon, I know more about the Oregon side, now being probably fully aid and assist and psychiatric security review and stuff, but not necessarily commitment.
Yeah.
And also limiting, now in Oregon, we're limited with the time we can have people for restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes the sickest people do the lowest level of crime in their trespassing, and we cannot get them into the hospital for restoration.
loss of autonomy over prioritization, right? Yeah. There was another hand over here. Yeah.
I don't know that I fully formed this thought, but what was lost, I think, in the street is the right response to crisis issues, meaning we have treated unusual occurrences by sending the police.
Mm.
And so our mission, police mission, has creeped into a behavioral health emergency response mission, and that's the wrong tool for the job.
Sure. Yeah. And there's the weird dichotomy of, well, like, what if we just had more cops that were trained to do this thing? It's like, yes, we should just continue to expand all of the expectations that we're putting on that system and not just build something else. But then, like, well, who's going to pay for that is always the counter, you know? Yeah.
I think just in a sense, a lost in systems that were never in place that we didn't realize maybe needed to be needed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID taught us that when we lost all these resources and realized like schools are the social safety net for children. That we're like, oh, we need, food safety and, all those things. So just in systems that were never even there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great answers.
What are we afraid of right now?
Well, I think that I don't want to sound like political, and I hope nobody takes it that way, but I just think culturally there's been a big shift due to some larger things going on, that there's kind of been a loss of humanity, and there's a lot of judgment. And that's, I think people are afraid of being judged.
Yep.
Yep. Well said.
Sir?
Yeah. Yeah. I recently led a forum where I brought all of our all of the leadership from the nonprofits who were willing to come in our community, and I led a discussion where I said, hey, I'm hearing a lot of dialogue about, well, we'll hope things turn around at the state. We'll hope things, turn around at the feds. Like, maybe there'll be an administration change, and then, it's so far in the future, and we're just clinging to this idea that maybe it will get better with circumstances completely outside of my control. I'm going to keep focusing on what I'm doing, which is, I suppose, a healthy way to compartmentalize it. But where we got to that day was, we got to go internal. We have to look at what can we do right now, not low-hanging fruit. Not what are the easy wins. What's the hard stuff? What are the hard things that we need to just lean into? It was an uncomfortable conversation. There's so many elements to funding that have changed so radically in the last 5 or 6 years that I think just the notion of uncertainty alone has caused so much turmoil and turnover, and people are just jumping ship. It's like the shuffling of the deck in social services every quarter. Like, someone loses a grant, 3 or 4 people migrate over to a different. It's constant, and I think it's important to say, absolutely, we have funding problems. What can we do about it? We can do some stuff. We can do some stuff. Will you go to the next one, James? So getting to sort of some of the definitions, defining safety, what does that even mean? What has changed in your minds? What are you seeing as far as psychological safety?
She just said it perfectly.
Yeah.
We're in environments where we're going to be judged. Is that psychologically safe? Not at all. And that's not just your setting. That's juvenile justice, adult corrections, Fire, EMS, law enforcement, it's all of them. We are in a psychological safety crisis right now.
Yeah. I think that something I'm seeing that I'm working with a lot of people on, especially some of the nonprofits that I'm working with on the leadership and culture development front, is if we can preserve it in-house, if we can create the psychological safety within our own team, there will be a transferable effect to the external. I'm going to pick on someone, but I don't know who yet. Okay, raise your hand if you're like middle management or manager, you oversee a team of 3 or more people. Okay, I'm coming at you. What's your name? Mia. Hi, I'm Nate. Hi. Okay, I'm gonna role play a scenario with you. I'm not gonna put you on the spot. This is not an interview. Okay. Okay. So let's pretend it's morning. What's your role?
I'm a peer supervisor.
Peer supervisor. Oh, perfect. Okay. And how many peers do you oversee?
12 peers, but I also oversee some case managers too.
Whew.
Yeah,
Do you have middle managers? Or you?
I am middle management.
So you have 12 direct reports.
Yes, and then some because there's some case managers that are not peers that I also oversee.
How you doing?
Good.
Okay. Okay. I kind of believe you. Okay, I won't pick on you too hard. Okay, so let's pretend like it's morning. You're doing a morning briefing because we all do those, right? Briefings, debriefings, AARs. Yeah.
We're seeing some no's. We're seeing some
I'm
no
seeing
nods.
very
Yeah.
little head nods.
Yep.
It's okay. It's okay. And I'm an employee of yours, and I'm walking the door, big team meeting, 10 minutes late, and I go, hey, I'm so sorry I'm late. My alarm went off, and I hit snooze, and I swear it just didn't go off again, and then I just couldn't get my kids to get their shoes on, and then wife, and the whole thing, and then there was traffic, and you know how they had to have the road closure, and anyways, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm just gonna go take my seat. How do you feel right now?
So honestly, in our work environment, our culture is that people are adults and they can kind of come and go as they please.
Okay.
So we don't have, they get penalized if they clock in late on their paycheck, right? And eventually HR people might come talk to them, but within our team, we don't micromanage people in that sense. They literally can come and go as they want to.
Yeah.
And it's not on me.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's common. Something that I want to invite into this room and something I want you guys to take with you right now is, what if it looked like this? Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't manage my time well this morning.
Yeah.
And I sit down, right?
The thing is, they don't even come in and apologize or nothing. They just come in whenever they want to,
Yeah.
and they sit down and don't say nothing. So it's fine.
But how do you feel now that I've said that? Do you feel like there was accountability there?
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Is there any?
I think there's like personal insight there that I would expect someone who's working in mental health to have about themselves.
Yeah.
Like to be able to acknowledge and to accept and to be able to call it for what it is. Like, I have poor time management. That's really great insight and accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen. Thank you. I've seen a lot in the peer world. People will sort of acknowledge, like, I'm working on my time management right now, so like my case notes are late. I'm working on this right now, and I see that level of accountability there. The point that I'm trying to get to is, if you can create a culture where people aren't afraid to just say that, magic happens. Trust me, I have built it. It works phenomenally.
In some ways, I feel like just in this thing, the pendulum has swung the other way, and that's where I struggle actually, is where because we don't have any accountability, they can come and go as they please. So then they take advantage of that, and it gets, the gap gets wider and wider.
Yep. That fuels extraordinary HR problems today in large behavioral health employers. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
In the corporate world, everyone, like, the answer to that question is like, we'll have a policy. Have a policy on tardiness and then hold people to the policy. It's just like, okay, well, sure, but like, policy doesn't create culture. Yes, please.
I think the piece also is that we're missing a lot is I feel COVID ruined everything. And because I have,
Fair.
because I run things, and I think the status that I hold negates people's ability to feel free enough, because I've built a culture and I've built a system that's sustained for a really long time, but because of my title and my accomplishments, it then makes people feel like they have to show up a certain kind of way. And I tell them all the time, I literally am not the boss of you. I am the boss of you. But I'm not the boss of you. You're a grown adult. You're a master's level clinician.
Yep.
You should be able to do the things because you're a person and this should be important to you. But because of my title and the things that I do in the position I hold, they struggle with that because, as in COVID, like you were told one thing, you had to believe this. You said everybody was going to die, and then you were like, never mind, tricked you. Everything is fine. Come back to work. Well, you can be close to people again.
Yeah.
And that skewed everybody's sense of safety. And then, so how am I not scared of you and your physical presence, and psychologically that I was gonna, if I was around you, I would kill my whole entire family and your whole entire family. And people with doctor, titles said all these things and then took it back. So where do I land?
Yeah.
And we don't speak about that enough, and we didn't teach enough, and we didn't do the repair work to reintegrate. We just were like, cool, you're good, go live your dreams, go back to normal. And how do you go back to normal when you were scared to death to be around other people, and you had to be told how to wash your hands, but now we're not being told how to reintegrate from that?
Yeah, fair point.
I think you're bringing forward something really important. That is this blend between your personal and your professional life. And I think a lot of those things is individually separate parts of our lives, but they're deeply integrated. And I think that's what COVID brought forward. And I think the residual is that there's a low-level anxiety that's still chronic to the condition that comes into the workplace as well. And of course now with hybrid work environments as well, we're still trying to sort that out. But I don't know that you have a distinction between personal and professional life now in the way that we used to enjoy that. If that's the right word, I'm not sure. But really important point.
Indeed, yeah. I think you have a very deep level of understanding. I cannot get over that you supervise 12 people directly. That's insane to me.
I was like, I supervise more than that. I just have 12 peers, and then I have another 6 case managers, so, which are not peers.
Yeah. I'm not saying you don't look capable, but I'm just wondering how you're doing.
Normal, what's so big about that?
Yeah. Well, it's very obvious that you're committed to the mission, right? And I think that's what we try to orient to sometimes when we're having those conversations. Is it's not about being late. It's not about the fact that I can tell that you're just not showing up. It's I'm fearful that you're not committed to the mission. That means people are going to be underserved. If we were selling cars, it's like, oh, you're not going to hit your sales quota this month. But when people are underserved out there, we know what the stakes are. And I think it's important to acknowledge that.
To piggyback off of what they were saying and what you're saying too, something I've noticed, and I'm trying to be really careful with my words because I'm not deliberately trying to be disrespectful or offensive, but it is something that I at least personally have observed, and that is a generational shift in work ethic as well.
You're not alone there. The data on that is gigantic.
So
Yeah.
there are a lot of younger people with their master's degrees coming in and working as case managers or whatever, who are 22, 24, they're Gen Z, whatever, and they literally don't care about, you talk to them about their why, you talk about them about trauma-informed approach, you talk to them about whatever, and they're literally like, oh, this was the easiest degree for me to get.
Yep.
Or, I have a family member living with bipolar and substance use, and so I was interested in this thing. But they don't care about professionalism at all. And that's what's difficult.
Yeah.
To kind of teach them work ethic. Sometimes these folks that are coming out of college, this is their first job, literally. They never worked fast food. They were all academic until they got this job, except for their internship. And it's interesting because the work ethic is so so different than the way most of us were raised.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were in another class, we were talking earlier, maybe it was yesterday, but I think giving credit to that generation in the sense that, and I didn't think about this until yesterday, is that they can turn it off. They don't take our work home.
Mm.
Like the presenter, and I don't know if it's in this class, I'm kind of looking around real quick, was that he was describing you were a police officer, and the expectation of, when I was brand new as a cop, is you study the maps. You, on your days off, you drive your district.
That's right.
County, you look up ORS, you study laws, you study everything. It becomes your identity. Versus the newer generation is like, nah, F this. So that's my day off. Like I ain't looking at that. I'm not at work. I'm not getting paid for that. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but I think that is also a decent, healthy balance. Because I know newer cops now, and it is, I think the pendulum is kind of swinging in a way. That they're there an hour early, and like, that's awesome. But like, hey man, you're not getting paid for this time. Why are you here? Stop looking at your emails, stop looking at reports.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree with Matt up front, like, COVID did ruin a lot of things. We see it in our line of work. People don't know how to talk to each other. Our job is talking to people all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't talk to each other.
Exactly.
That-
You can't look someone in the eye and have a conversation anymore. You can't be personable. You don't have the right question to ask.
Yeah.
You don't know how to drive a car because you didn't go outside. All the life skills that the younger generation is expected to know, they don't know how to do it because they didn't have the opportunity to learn. So
It's a great segue. I think when we talk about psychological safety and now as we transition into physical safety, what's the emotion that you think is at the bottom of why we don't have psychologically safe environments? What do you think people are experiencing in a room on a debriefing? Fear. How many people here know the work of Tony Blauer? Anybody? He's a dear, dear friend of mine. Some years ago, we identified something together, he and I. And we implemented a potential solution that we prototyped, and it worked, and we began to do it at other places. We began to introduce the staff to the proposition of fear management training. Fear in psychological conditions, fear in physical conditions. Somebody mentioned a new employee, the gentleman, the police officer earlier, 23-year-old person doesn't come with the same work ethic. In the juvenile justice setting, for example, we hire many young people into the uniform juvenile justice job class because very often that's a platform or a springboard for other kinds of jobs. In New York City, they actually have their own police division known as ACS Police, or it's a springboard for other jobs in law enforcement. So very often corrections becomes a staging area for other parts of the public safety system. A 22 or 23-year-old juvenile justice corrections officer has to tell a 21 or 20-year-old person served in a juvenile justice setting, it's time to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And they're nearly the same age. What do you think they report to their supervisor in what they're experiencing when they have to go give this prompt? Fear. We found that addressing the variance, there are some things, you have observed this among your coworkers, there are some people who seem naturally very gifted working with someone who presents higher risk conditions and how they animate themselves. And there are others who want no part of that. We have workforces in psychiatric care and services, residential treatment facilities, adult and juvenile justice settings who are riddled with fear, riddled with it. And when we begin to understand how the nervous system works and the startle-flinch system works, people begin to take their autonomy back. People begin to, through their understanding of fear, realizing that as contagious as fear may be, so is courage. You can't be courageous without fear. Senses of physical safety. She brought up an absolutely delightful example of how terrified people were based on the messaging of getting around other people for cross-contamination epidemiological reasons. How many people in your workforce are particularly outspoken about not wanting to deal with certain people that you may serve because they get loud and animated and aggressive? Yeah. Some people say yes, some people say no. Here's what we've come to learn. There is variance in this. We can go to the next slide. There is variance in fear. And it doesn't have to be as wide as it is. My sense of physical safety is something that I can change by knowing how my nervous system works and how the kinesiology of fear works. I also, maybe you would agree, isn't there a big distinction between knowing what to do and not knowing what to do? What is the first thing you do, Jared, when someone says from across the room, you know what, Jared, fuck you, I want to stick you in the throat with a fucking pencil? What would you do now that you're trained?
I would get curious and engage.
Yeah. Hey, Andy, it sounds like you're really angry and you want to stick me in the throat with a pen. Now, am I imminent? Am I danger close? Is my fist cocked? I've watched $350,000 a year psychiatrists order restraint because a patient was holding a cup of urine and said, I'm going to throw it at somebody. That's not the same as actively closing the distance. Your risk circuitry is getting lit up with suddenness and speed of stimulus, which actually triggers the sensory thalamus and the amygdala to activate the extensor chain when it starts to come your way. You splay your fingers, your arms extend, and you turn your head away from danger. And every human being will do. If I threw something at you right now, this is what you do. That's danger close. Danger far, your extensor chain's not going to activate. What is going to happen is that your emotional arousal is going to get very, very significant. We now know that educating people with the normalcy of that is part of the prescription to get control of your fear. You would think, I can't be around people like that. I feel a certain way. I don't know. What do you think? You think the people that actually deal with that on a regular basis aren't feeling that impulse at all? No, of course they are. They know how to manage the impulse. That's normal. My nervous system sending me messaging about my physical state when someone is animating themselves in front of me, that's normal. What I do with it is the thing. How many people have read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl? What does he talk about at the end of the book? He talks about the moment between the impulse and your choice. Knowing fear widens your reaction time to that and gives you an opportunity to have the dignity of choice. I loved being a firefighter and the journey of that because I confronted things that I was afraid of. I did not know how to swim, so I threw myself at the rope at the rescue swimmer school. And now you can't fucking drown me. I was afraid of heights. I went to the rope rescue school and panicked learning the knots slowly. Forced myself into that. There is no escape from the discomfort when it comes to expanding your consciousness about what you can do to feel safer, physically and psychologically. But there's no such thing as avoiding discomfort of the journey. So our message is lean into it. The person who continually points to the external circumstances and says, that shit has to change in order for me to be okay. Well, everyone's doing that. Where has it gotten us? We're at a conference where we have to restore safety, we have to restore dignity, we have to restore hope. How long have we been trying to change the external circumstances? Anyone feel safer? I don't. Not from that. I better deal with, I will say this. When I went through, what's the city that's right above Richmond that I had to go through? I shit myself
Oakland?
driving through that place. What was it called?
Oakland?
Oh, Oakland. So I got to go to the Bay Area to the Office of Neighborhood Safety, where this program hires people with no educational background. You must have lived experience in carceral systems. You have to have done hard time. You're going to get $100,000 a year. Here's your job. When there's gun violence in the community, you deploy and you prevent retaliatory violence, which means that they're meeting with potential perpetrators and they're meeting with victims' families. They are city employees. Guess who else works for the city? The police department. Police department wants to get to the bottom of this. They don't talk to one another. I had to drive through Oakland to get to this place. That was someplace where my needle was going crazy. Oakland was bad. Has anyone here ever been to Oakland? God, I don't know how you do it. So if I'm going to work in Oakland, what I would do is start going to Oakland more, like as a preparation. That's how I would start dealing with that. That's how we help people overcome elevators. You get them up to the threshold. Then you get them to hit the button. Then you get them to step in and step out. Then you get them to get into the elevator. Then you hold the doors for them. Then they can get out. Then they start going up and down. This is normal psychological intervention for flooding, we call that, for overcoming certain things. There is no overcoming fear through external circumstance manipulation exclusively. I hope my language didn't offend. Okay. I just talk this way. So we have a threshold problem. We have a threshold problem. What this gentleman, Officer Guzman, what he is not afraid of, others may be afraid of. Now, we can't account for all of that variance in the workforce by everybody getting to the same place, but this is an invitation to a journey. Yeah.
I would say, like, police and law enforcement, and I can't speak for everyone else, I don't have an option.
Right, you have to, you're there as an instrument to enforce the law.
I can't say to dispatch, no, I'm not going to go to that.
Right, right, you go out.
Individual in crisis. Like,
Yes.
I will say that, yeah, there are calls I would like to not go to, and I'd like to not deal with.
Yeah.
I'd like to not, like, there are plenty of coworkers, anything with mental health, they're like, Guzman, you go. Like,
Yep.
I don't want to deal with that. You know, but at the end of the day, there is no choice.
I love that. Thank you.
And doesn't mean that my needle isn't spiking, doesn't mean.
Right, but you're managing it.
But I still have to deal with it. You know, like,
Yes. You have a sense of duty, obligation. How many people here know Ernie Stevens from Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops? He's a good friend of mine. We talk all the time. Just on a recent podcast, Tony and I hosted him on the De-Escalation Station podcast. He revealed for the first time ever, he's a lifelong martial artist. And he is constantly a beneficiary of criticism because on all of his mental health work, he's doing things like, tell me about what's going on. Why am I here? He's putting himself in less than optimal positions to engender influence and trust. You think he's doing that just because he wants to do that? He knows the risks he's taking because he's been a lifelong martial artist. He actually said, I never revealed that until this podcast. And Tony said, I knew that before you even said it. So we are inviting you to a journey. As much as this training isn't oriented toward the curriculum content about knowing fear, we are inviting you to a journey of learning more about your nervous system and how fear works. And we're here to tell you that you can overcome, to a substantial degree, the things that you are averse with upon learning more about yourself.
If you would, please, James. Thank you. I know I'm in a room full of mental health professionals, so I'm going to keep this one brief. How many of you in your role have to respond directly to people who are in like 10 out of 10 behavioral health crisis? Yeah, okay, good. How many of you have seen The Mummy? The first one with Brendan Fraser, the only one that's ever really been good, other than the classics, okay. So there's like that scene where the antagonist guy, he sucks the soul out of people. That's kind of how it feels, I think, sometimes when you're standing in front of that person and they're just not with us currently, but they're explosive about it. Hillary Clinton put microchips in my brain, like, you're one of them, you're wearing someone else's skin.
You're a clone.
Like, yeah, you're a clone. They're probably naked. There might be some fecal matter involved at some point. And when they're just focused on you, that's how it feels to me. They're just like, just sucking the energy from me. I don't think anyone's really exempt from that. We just have a threshold for tolerance, right? Something that we talk about a lot is self-care, and I'm not going to do a lecture on self-care. We don't need another one of those. But what I do want to touch on is confronting the things, at least beginning a conversation on confronting the things that make that tolerance factor for when I'm standing in front of someone and my needle not getting moved longer. And what we've seen, and the data absolutely shows, I'll show you the case studies. I'm sure there's a couple of people in here who will understand this one, but there is a direct proportion, direct causal relationship to endurance training and suicide survivors. I will tell you that I've had a short career as a non-professional triathlete, and I will tell you that there is a very humbling moment at the beginning of an Ironman event where they ask people, like, remember your why, and you will see a lot of jacked dudes cry like babies because they're remembering their why. It's because they're suicide survivors. There's an immense amount of that. We have found something to dump time and energy into that we get something back from, and we learn to endure. Now, I'm not saying cardio is the solution for you. Not going to place that on anyone. I know that some people think that cardio is the devil. What's that? I love cardio. I love it, obviously. You know, once we put some more time and energy into that and confront what it is that we know is bothering us in healthy ways, right? I've worked with folks who they don't practice, they don't have like a self-care regimen, you know, like they're not waking up and praying and meditating and going for a walk and drinking microgreens and sauna and cold plunge, and you know, it's just like, oh yeah, I just go fishing on Sundays, and if I could get a nap in, I'm good, you know? And I've never been able to understand that. I need so much more than that, but I've completely let go of the whole, well, if I wake up at this time and I do this thing and I go through this regimen and I practice all of these things, then I'll get the thing that I want, which is this capacity. The capacity bar fills back up. Briefly, I'll share a story on something that changed my mind on that. So I heard a story about there were some guys at a conference similar in nature to this. I won't get into it. And there's one guy very, very new to the job, one guy very, very experienced, and an elderly gentleman who spent most of his career as a Jesuit priest. I don't know if anyone knows anything about that realm, but there's a very high level of study to do that and to practice for a long time. And they're walking on the beach, and the perspective is from the guy who has a lot of experience. It's not the Jesuit priest. And the really inexperienced guy says to the Jesuit priest, hey, how do you stay so zen all the time? And the guy who was telling the story that I heard said that he just sunk his head because he was just like, why would you ask a question of this guy like that? These guys are so overly educated. Like, this is going to be the long-winded answer. You're ruining the walk on the beach right now. And the priest says, oh, that's easy. Go for a walk in the woods. Read a good book. Spend time with people you care about. Watch your grandchildren play, you know. No recipe for the mechanism, right? And I think I'm going to start there. I'm going to touch on some more stuff later, but Andy's going to talk more about dignity.
So we've talked about safety. Let's talk about the restoration of dignity. Self-respect. As I age, and as I have been in front of extraordinary numbers of people who have assailed me in one way or another, I have come to understand through my own anecdotal experience that my self-respect is all that matters. There are principles that I lived through to arrive there. And there is some understanding that has come along the way where my sense of self-respect becomes most vulnerable in my most intimate relationships where I have need. But when it comes to people served, like I could probably refer to, is it Deputy Guzman or, yeah, Deputy Guzman. In the course of your career, how many verbal insults have been hurled at you?
I don't know.
Right. You lose count after a while, right? Same? When your kid does it, it's a different deal though, isn't it? Feels different. We have need in those relationships. We have interest in those relationships. Guess what? The principle doesn't change. My emotional arousal that's occurring upon the presentation of disrespect has nothing to do with what the person is presenting and everything to do with my nervous system. This principle of dignity is at risk in so many places because we have made extraordinary associations to the external behaviors that people produce and an environment of respect. And I'm not saying environments of respect aren't important. I'm talking about in our work, when we are responding, our roles are to respond to the presentation of dysregulation, discontrol, a need for some kind of, in many cases, biological or clinical intervention. Demanding someone who is presenting those attributes to produce respectful tone or language so that I can be okay in the delivery of my services is going to have me on a long road of being frustrated. Can I get to a place where my needle doesn't move during the presentation of someone's discontrol, aggression? And I heard an absolutely lovely quote from Jiddu Krishnamurti. Does anybody know who he is? Watch him on Instagram. He's dead now. This is the Theosophy guy from the 60s and 70s. Super, super intellectual. And how many people here have gone to crisis negotiation, hostage negotiation, de-escalation training where they hear about the active listening skills and more pies and minimal encouragers or validation statements or Marshall Linehan's 6 levels of validation? Okay. Before Jiddu even knew what the active listening skills were, he actually said, the answer is in my act of listening. When I am truly attentive to another human being, when I am fully attentive, there is no border. And whatever their statements are, however caustic, however hostile, if I am truly attentive, they go right by me. The moment I produce border, there's conflict. That doesn't mean permission to be assaulted if you don't want to be assaulted. I'm not talking about how you conduct yourself in your everyday life. What I am talking about is when you're in a role where you are delivering service to someone who we anticipate in the conditions of employment and the duties are going to be presenting discontrol and dysregulation. Why the hell would I want to bring my normal everyday filter to that interaction? Yet we see it all the time. How many people here have any familiarity with either school crisis response or supporting youth? Okay. We don't properly prepare many of our workforce cohorts about that predisposition. People just do what they naturally do. Knock it off. Put that thing away. Stop or else. Now, this isn't a de-escalation training, but let me say, when we get done with a group of people, those phrases, they're gone. They're gone. Looks like you have a rifle pointed at someone. I see that you have a detonator in your hand. I hear you saying that there are nanobots coming from the shower head. We change patterns of language. We don't fall into the old habits. I don't need someone to fuel my sense of dignity and self-respect. I have it. I choose to give it away. So in a conference titular heading, the restoration of safety, dignity, and hope, we are here to invite you to a journey of the things that enable you to engender self-respect, which may mean avoiding things, avoiding behaviors that cause you to feel guilt and regret, getting help for those things, living your life in a way where your development and commitment to a personal sense of dignity has nothing to do with what other people do. This is a very different message than what we're used to hearing. That's the invitation.
Hit the next one. Something I'm going to touch on very briefly. I'm very grateful that we've had so much audience participation, and for the sake of time and out of respect for yours, I'm gonna cut this one a little short. Wonderful quote up there from Ernie Stevens that Andy mentioned earlier. To grow emotional regulation, we have to practice it. Practice means actual practice. So something that we do when we teach crisis de-escalation is we make people drill on the skill. We go through a set of progressions where we make people demonstrate the skill. This is not death by PowerPoint. If it's a one-day training, we spend half of the day drilling. That's how it works. And it is amazing watching the progression where, especially if there's a co-training where people are getting spear care, so the training that is developed by Andy and Tony Blauer. So it's amazing to watch. People will spend an entire day putting hands on each other, actually putting hands on each other, and then the next day are being asked, tell me to go to my room, and they choke up. They're so afraid to talk to each other, even in this controlled environment. And it's because we have such a difficult time verbally confronting people. We have such a hard time wrestling with our own stuff. And when we do the drills, we start off really simple. We start off by saying, like, I am an alien from outer space, and I need you to tell me that there's no room on Earth, and I need to go to Jupiter. And people were like, oh, okay. I was just like, yeah, try it. And then they try to do, because we teach an acronym and an actual method. And they struggle. They stumble over a little bit. And it's like, okay. And then they get comfortable there. And then we go to another step, and then we go to another step. By the end of the day, full-blown scenarios. People are yelling. Sometimes we've seen people go for the full Oscar, and they'll pick up a chair. We're like, wait, we didn't tell them to do that. Didn't tell them to do that. When we practice, it becomes a part of what we're doing. Go ahead and hit the next one. Hope cannot be faked. I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the funding thing, we hope things will turn around at the state, but we don't have any control over that. We hope things will turn around at the Fed, so maybe some funding will come down the pipeline. We don't have any control over that. We can vocalize it. We can say, like, hey, some of us got together. We can sign, petitions, but there's not a whole lot that we can actually do about that, is there? What about within our own teams? Going back to that, in that culture, the culture development of, I'm here for you, you're here for me. Like maybe the team discussion looks like someone walks in the door and they can't tell who's in charge. Like when we're getting to that place, we're in a good spot, right? Hope comes from a belief system that is created in culture. It's not a policy thing. If we want to restore that, we have to start with ourselves. We don't get a magic reset button. We have to go internal. Go ahead and hit the next one. Show of hands. How many of you have had a a mentor that's not like your direct supervisor? Ever. Most of the room. How many of you currently have a mentor? It's not a direct supervisor. Okay. How many of you, your mentor is your direct supervisor? Okay, all right. People were like, a couple of times, yeah. Are they in the room? Is that why? I'm just kidding, you don't have to answer. If this was an advertising executive type meeting, not that many hands. Why? Someone say it. Yeah, right. Mission, right? Like we're all kind of here for the same reason. Like, I don't care if you de-escalate someone better than I de-escalate someone. We just want the person to get de-escalated, right? Like whoever gets the win. Where does that come from? Why are you here? Yeah. You want to help people? Say more about that.
Well, just the whole concept that we're in the helping profession. Most of us have some kind of core story of why we got into this work. And so it's not about competition, it's about there's a mission or there's a vision or some kind of internal driver.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like compassion is a prerequisite, but you still need the skills. Yeah. When did it get old or overused for someone to say in a job interview to work in this line of work, you know, crisis, police, fire, EMS, all of it, to just say, I want to make a difference in my community? People are like, well, yeah, like, of course you're going to say that. Everyone says that. I haven't seen it in a while. I have not interviewed someone in that space and them just say, I just really want to help people. And I think I've got some skills and abilities that can allow me to do that. That's where I think part of the hope has been lost. And what I want to invite you to do is look at your reason why you started again. You might not have like some spectacular story of retribution and resilience. You don't need it. You know, like you don't have to have like this deep personal experience, you know, like what I have, you know? Like you don't need that to justify the fact that you're passionate about what you do. Don't let the Instagram speakers throw you off from, you know, like what it actually means to work in this profession. It's public service. You know, like we all wanted to do this because we wanted to be rich and famous, of course. Get back to the why.
How many people here have a leader that they admired in their career? Jared, tell us about yours. What were the attributes of this leader that you admired?
I think extremely dedicated, competent, and I would say above all, like accountable. So very responsible, and so took a lot of ownership of what they did.
Yeah.
And so even when, let's say, other people made mistakes, they would say, oh, I must not have communicated that clearly to you.
Yep.
Or I didn't give you the resources, so it was never like someone below that was fault.
Yep.
So I really admired that.
Yeah. These are sacred principles that we're discussing and returning to. Guzman, how about you? Leader that you admired, what were the attributes that they embodied?
I think for me, he was one that he was the subject matter expert on everything. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty with the rest of us. I don't know how he would do it, but his patrol car would blink around the county, and he must be going a million miles a second. But he'd be at one end, and then you'd hear him on the radio, and the next thing is on your phone, like, how did you get over here? You know, but he'd also push and encourage you to get outside your comfort zone.
Yep.
And as well as check you when you were pushing it too far. So, I mean, he was that guy for us.
selfless, a lot of selflessness in that, and a sense of duty to something bigger than oneself. A duty to the craft, a duty to others, a duty to myself even. That I know that these principles are going to bring about more excellent outcomes than the other principles. How many people here are familiar with the work of Dave Grossman? He's a good buddy of mine. His research lately is on the sleepiness epidemic among youth with devices and how that's showing up in a number of marked behaviors. And the challenge can feel so overwhelming to behavioral health workforces, corrections workforces, residential workforces. He's a voice right now for duty, to get back to the sense of duty rather than our own discomfort. Everything that we have been talking about here have not been about external circumstances. These are propositions for each of you to entertain so you can become more optimal in the conditions that are obviously such that a whole conference is named Restoring Safety, Dignity, and Hope. Like, we didn't title the conference. The message is for you to constantly be invited to examine your own thinking and feeling and to consider the principles that still to this day nobody objects to in their efficacy.
Go ahead, James. For the sake of time, I'm going to
blast through this.
Yeah. I told you I run a program called the Resource Hub. We're purely social services, but I have a background as a first responder, but I have no law enforcement experience whatsoever. Recently, we were invited to be a part of a multi-agency operation to help people escape sex trafficking. And so it was a bunch of 3-letter agencies and some local law enforcement sting operation. And the goal was illicit sex work, bring sex workers in, isolate the sex workers from their transportation methods, and try to identify, are you a victim of sex trafficking, and then go after the traffickers. So the sex workers are being brought into a room with the state-level forensic interviewers. They're going through the thing, doing the phone, doing the interview, and at the end, they say, okay, if you want, on the other side of that door, there is an agency that only works with people who are escaping labor and sex trafficking. There's community resources in the room, food, clothes, water, toiletries, hotel vouchers. We can get you out of town. Do you want out? Why was the Resource Hub guy invited to this? Because I have the resources? Sure, but like, why was the trust of those agencies in line with that thinking? I'll tell you later. Next slide.
Okay. We talk a lot about responsibility, our flexibility to be adaptive during any number of emergencies, technical, behavioral, structural. There's a symbol out in the world that embodies the best principles of the affect of a responder. In aids to navigation in the maritime world, does anybody know why lighthouses are chosen for construction where they are? In the Puget Sound region in eastern or western Washington, we have hundreds of these things all throughout the Puget Sound region. Does anybody here know what they do? Keeps them away from, what are their other core duties? They have a couple. So they unidimensionally project light to let vessels in distress know when you are in weather conditions, wind, if your view of me is obscured, I am in a fixed place on the earth, and you know where you are because of your relativity to where I am not moving. I'm here, anchored on the earth. Wind, waves, weather can blow over me. I'm still going to be here. Somewhere around me is safe harbor, but you have to navigate to me. When I took my 1980s trawler to the San Juan Islands with my family and crossed the Strait of Juan de Fuca, I did not know, as the New York boat owner who moved to Washington, that there are times of day you cross the Strait of Juan de Fuca. You don't just go across it like it's a lake, because the Pacific Ocean is coming in and out of there with extraordinary power. So we got our asses kicked leaving the San Juan Islands, coming back over to Port Townsend. And I got to experience the value of the lighthouse firsthand, because in these 5-foot waves, the dog is vomiting, my oldest daughter says we're going to die, my wife has got the cabinets of the boat, so the soup cans don't come out, and we're just going up and down. All I said to myself was, I just got to keep my bow into the waves, and I just have to head for that lighthouse, because Port Townsend is right there. And I had to go through 2 hours of that nonsense. I didn't even want to look down at the navigation equipment. I just wanted to keep the bow into the wave, knowing that, because if we went broadside, we were going to roll. It was then that it became apparent to me that here's what the lighthouse didn't do. What the lighthouse didn't do was cut itself from its moorings and swim out into those conditions and say, hey, Andy, I'm here to rescue you. Like, I went to rescue swimmer school. One of the things that we actually do if someone is flailing and carrying on and you're there to rescue them, we knock them out and grab them so we can swim back if they're going to become assaultive during the rescue. This is not what the lighthouse does. The lighthouse does something completely different. It says, this is your emergency, not my emergency. You have to come to me. I'm going to keep unidimensionally projecting light that enables you to find your way to me. If your view is obscured of me, even for a moment, when it comes back, I'm still going to be here. You come to me. This is the symbol that we use in describing the perfect emotional affect of someone engaged in de-escalation. This is your emergency, not my emergency. These are the principles that we used in the highest stakes hostage negotiations. We use them in psychiatric emergency response. We use them in crisis response. We don't become emotionally dysregulated because someone else is emotionally dysregulated. We don't have the luxury of becoming emotionally dysregulated. So your responsibility has a direct relationship to who you are in the moment.
Go ahead and hit the next one, James. Okay, I'm blazing through these.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was invited to participate in a re-entry simulation. Has anyone ever done one of those? Show of hands. Really? If you get the opportunity, do one. Re-entry simulation, 20-second version. You are put in the shoes of someone who's exiting a carceral setting, and you get to identify what kind of barriers that looks like navigating the real world. It's a tough room. There was a panel of folks who are formerly incarcerated who are now well into their careers, doing amazing things. I've gotten to grow with a few of them and supervise one, which was a real pleasure. Someone asked, hey, like, how do we deal with the fact that people who are coming out of incarceral settings, people with lived experience, have baggage? What do we do about that? And I will tell you that there's a very big difference between what that actually means and I think what she meant to say. The reality of the situation is, in most cases, if it's not an actual boundary issue, is it's not their baggage, it's yours. And that needed to be said in that room, and I said it. And I was a little nervous to do it, but it needed to be said. we have to confront our own biases when it comes to that realm. I mean, like the tightrope of utilizing folks with lived experience, formerly incarcerated, to then help guide people towards resiliency is something that we with experience and those of us without that experience of lived experience need to talk about all the time, and we have to keep those boundaries tight. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Next slide, James. Did we skip community engagement?
No, it's next.
Okay. Traumatology. Are people putting traumatology people in your agencies? I know Tacoma Fire has one. I just saw a hand go up in the back. Your agency, sir?
That's our 10-minute warning.
There's a traumatologist in your agency?
He was raising our 10-minute warning sign.
Oh, the 10-minute warning. Okay. All right. Sadly, we've been late to the dance. How many people here are familiar with the statistics in adult corrections for life expectancy? Anybody? 58. Extraordinary number of EAP referrals every year. We're late to the dance on having systems in place in our agencies that support professionally people who are in the job classes. Consider, beyond EAP, recommending, suggesting, offering up what you can do to enhance the resilience capacity within your own agency for your own people. When we see those positions put in place, things change. We saw it. How many people here know Cassie Hallstone? Anybody? She was working with Tacoma Fire for a while for their CARES program, worked very closely with their traumatologist. Do you have one in your agency, Guzman? You got the peer line?
Peer support.
Yep, okay. And how's that working? Yeah.
You're asking the wrong individual on that question.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So if there are programmatic upgrades that need to occur, what does this look like? It looks like people who are attending to their wellness within the employer because of the conditions of employment. And to the extent that you can recommend or orient change on that front, we're recommending you do it. Because wherever this really is, when traumatology is within an agency, people are well. State hospitals needed it forever. Okay, James.
Why was the Resource Hub guy invited to the 3-letter thing? Because I built the relationships that got me the invite. One relationship at a time. That there's trust, there's accountability, and there's respect there. Like, they know the politics and the procedures of criminal justice, and wherever you sit on whatever side of that fence, it goes out the window, and we're just helping the person that's right in front of us. And we're making all the exceptions we can, right? I mean, so like in this operation, they're saying to the sex workers, hey, we're not going to arrest you for this. I mean, like, some things they had to, right? Like, hey, you have an outstanding warrant here, there's nothing we can do about that. Hey, you're not supposed to have a gun. There's nothing we can do about that. Like, we gotta go down this other pathway. But the point was to actually rescue them and then find traffickers, prosecute them. That's why we were all in the room. When we commit to being in this field, when there are those of us who are willing to go into the trenches and do the hard stuff, there's an axiom I want you to take with you, which is we provide hope to the people who don't have any, and sometimes we provide life to people who don't want it. The hand that offers that help needs to be a competent one. I don't think that's always the case. And that's something we can take ownership of. That's something I take personal ownership of every single program I work with. I'll tell you that when we have people come into the hub, we have these providers that are supposed to be providing certain services. When they don't hold up their end, we have a conversation about it. It's not a pleasant one. Like, hey, we told a single mother who has 4 kids and is living in her car that she was gonna be able to do an intake with you today to potentially get into a domestic violence shelter, and you didn't show up. It's a problem, period. And I think part of that fear of confrontation, some of the things that we have talked about today, is the driver about why those conversations don't happen. The stakes are high. The accountability can also be high. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. I think we should just go right to the last slide.
Sure, yeah.
Let's go right to the last slide, James. Here we are. If you're on LinkedIn, please find us, Andy Prisco and Nate Block. Jumpstart Mastery has a company page on LinkedIn as well. We do a lot of broadcasts on LinkedIn all the time. The Jumpstart Mastery Network is a learning environment with well over 1,000 professionals from all the sectors, public safety, behavioral health, workplace violence prevention, where we all come together and tackle so many of these larger systemic issues with live events, sessions. We hope that you'll attend. It's free to gain access, and there are subscription levels if you want access to some asynchronous content. Stay plugged into us. We're out there really trying to move the needle on getting away from things that control and toward things that support. I've known Jared Noble, who's been in this room for almost 10 years now. He was one of our formative students years ago when we implemented training outside of the State Behavioral Health Agency into larger systems. We've been at this for a while, and to get to know you would be a privilege. Nate, a little bit about stewardship?
Yeah, so there's the contact information for me and the website. I'll tell you that I started this with the idea that I just want to help people. So if you're at all interested or know someone who could use some leadership and culture development, please get a hold of me. I'm very responsive to emails, and it's a lot more affordable than you think. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for your time and your interest and your willingness to be here and to listen and to participate. It's very appreciated. Thank you.